Hey, it's Charlie at Charlie Slybox, and I'm here with, it doesn't matter who I'm here with. Um, as you know, this is Max, the celebrity angling enthusiast. Some might say expert.
I wouldn't.
And today he is sporting a freshly made
Ooh,
eyeglass retainer, custom
look at that.
eyeglass retainer,
Very beautiful.
made for him by his sweetheart in Carp colors. So not only will you be able to focus on his glasses, you'll be able to focus on that retainer as well. And we'd love to hear your opinions of it. They'll probably be available. Max is going to start working some extra hours
At the
after
bead
hours in the
factory.
shop in the bead factory in the back. So if you'd like a custom Carp colored,
You guys know where to find
you'd
me.
have to talk her into showing you how to do it. But
Maybe. I think she'd be amenable to it.
maybe, maybe. We are here today to tell you about sort of a spring fishing kickoff. It's what, March 14th, something like that. The spring season, you know, we don't have a closed season here in Colorado, but it is definitely spring season coming around, which I always think of as the start of the fishing season. There's a lot of fishing that you can do in the winter, but it's, you know, as Max can attest, it's never very good. It's good enough to get you through,
Yes.
and I've been there. You know, my favorite spot to fish in the winter is the Bahamas, and it's usually very good there.
You're going there soon,
I
actually.
am actually going there
Look at
soon.
that.
Yeah, that's a great wintertime fishing spot.
Before we get into this, what are your favorite flies for the Bahamas? What are you excited to fish for the Bahamas right now, here in the next
The
couple
Bahamas
weeks?
bonefish are not terribly picky fish. They like tan flies with some orange on them. So I've tied about 150 tan flies with
You
some
have
orange
that
on them.
box with you. It's
I
ridiculous.
have my, you know, the bonefish junk came from there. The flip flop came from there. You know, I everything in that box is tan and orange.
Yeah, no, it is.
You know, so that's one of the things that's cool about bonefish flies is you can kind of experiment a little bit. They're not, if you can get your fly to a bonefish without scaring him, he'll probably eat it. So I like to experiment and try lots of crazy stuff,
It's fun.
which is sort of fun. You know, I actually was thinking last night I was tying some of those crabs that I was showing you,
Yeah.
and it's sort of like Picasso tying. It's not
Yeah.
like it's got legs, but they're not where the legs are supposed to be, and you know, it's kind of a nice departure from technical trout stuff for sure.
That's super cool.
But I am ready for some technical trout stuff
Yes.
this year for sure.
Yes.
You know, usually, you know, around April, by April 1st, certainly it kind of depends on what the weather does every year. But by April 1st, we're into the hard swing of things with good Baetis hatches going on. You know, the fish are kind of coming out of the winter and they're hungry and wanting to fatten up a little bit. You know, the dry fly fishing when there's a hatch can be really, really good. The nymph fishing is generally very, very good. Just generally speaking, the bugs start to move around a lot more. And of course, streamer fishing is you know, that's the best time of year. Everybody talks about fall streamer fishing is the best, but I would say spring streamer fishing is probably better,
I would agree
especially
100%.
pre runoff, and we're way pre runoff, but you know, the fish are a lot more aggressive. It seems like in the springtime. So we're going to talk
Not for
about kind of what you know, what my idea on this is, what I've been kind of tying up and making sure I have in my box. We're going to see what Max has whipped up in his box, and kind of talk about how we get prepped and ready for the onslaught that is about to come. You know, you've had maybe a couple months to be filling your box, and I know I have had a couple months, and I haven't been doing it, so I've been sort of in a rush doing that lately.
Doesn't it always feel like that when you get to this point of
It
year?
does, and I have 8 billion. I mean, I could honestly not tie another fly
Yes.
for the rest of my
I was
life and have enough.
I was saying that to her the other day, where I was like, dude, I have like no flies right now, and she was like, you have 8 fly boxes with like
Yeah.
100 flies each of them in the back of your car. You have more
That might
flies
be a
than
good
anybody else.
experiment
You know
at
what I
some
mean?
time,
Like
though, to just like not tie anything and just see
for the winter.
how you get through the season.
Well, the problem is you have a full box of all this stuff, but there's like a little row missing like that
100%.
of like that's the shit
100%.
that you actually need.
Yep. Yeah. I
Like,
looked in my Humpy box the other day and I have like 2 size 16 yellow ones. I have a billion other colors, but I have, because I fished a bunch of yellow ones last year.
Yep.
So I've got to tie some size 16 yellow Humpies.
Yep.
You know, I sit down and I tie a bunch of baby gongas in the spring, tan baby gongas. And I've tied those sort of through the winter here and there. And I've got a billion of them. I don't need any more, but I still tie them.
it's part of the ritual.
Yeah,
It's part of
yeah.
the.
You know, so if I go fishing with anybody else, they lose them all. I don't lose flies hardly ever. Where I lose flies are to things like Max.
I lost a couple of your flies
You
last
did.
year. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I don't lose too many. So that's sort of what we're going to talk about. And I don't know, we can still, where would you like to start?
I mean, I feel like we start with where we're at right now, which is, like you said, middle of March.
Yep.
My, I mean, just to kick it off, I feel like my experience on the water here, especially the past week or two, both warm water stuff and trout stuff, has felt significantly different. Like it feels like right now fish are moving. It doesn't seem like the food sources are quite there yet for
Right.
them
Yeah,
to.
they're on the lookout, but there's not much to eat.
Yeah, it's funny. Like you go to like I was at Decker's on Monday, and you walk down there, and there was one riffle that had 30 fish in it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And there's no bugs coming off. Really hard to catch them. Yes, they're catchable, but like very hard to catch them.
Sure.
But they're all there waiting. You know what I mean? And starting to feel fresh. Same with the carp and the bass and stuff like that. Feels like they're starting to go. So I mean, for me, for me this time of year, there's really only two types of fishing that are happening. You know, I'll do the dry fly thing when it presents itself.
Sure.
Feels like it hasn't presented itself too much for me the past couple weeks.
Yeah,
But
we've had weird weather too. I mean, it's been
Yes.
pretty nice out for March. In between the giant storms.
Very nice.
So we haven't had. I left my house this morning. It was snowing, and it's I don't know how warm it is outside, but it's fairly warm.
It's got to be
50.
mid-50s, yeah. Windy, but mid-50s.
Yeah. So and that's the weather can always screw you.
Yep.
But yeah, starting to get those kind of like overcast spring days where it's warm and overcast.
Yeah.
Is what we're waiting for sure.
But I think we start with the streamer stuff because to me this is where, as you know, I feel like I've been streamer fishing, and not just the jig streamer stuff, guys, but actual like sinking line, tip down, like doing the thing since late January, early February, and I feel like it's still very much a part of the program right now, and it's only going to keep getting better.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, it's going to get much better.
It's going to get much better. But I think that this time of year, and I'll talk about some of the flies here in a second, but like you were saying, I think this is, once it's in full swing, it's probably arguably the best streamer fishing of the year. But this is the time that I would say the most big fish get caught clean, not around spawns and stuff like that, but like this is the time to actually get one fair. And I've personally gotten like 3 or 4 good ones so far this year, but a lot of the guys that I know, like it's a sneaky good time to walk around and do that kind of stuff as fish start to wake up. To talk about some flies, the fly that I've been using the most this year for this has been the sparring partner for Matt Winkler, in like a tan and an olive. I've been tying these. Is that a brass cone or a tungsten cone on the commercial one?
Brass.
That's what I thought when I was picking it up. I've been tying them with a tungsten cone for the dream and stuff like that. But I think this time of year, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts as well. But for me, I think taking some of the lessons from the jig style stuff and sort of applying it to this style of fishing, getting things low, very key, keeping things in the same current seams. That's something that gets proven to me time and time again with the streamer fishing early season. When fish are cold, it feels like they will fall back in a current seam with a streamer very far. Very hesitant to cross the current seams.
Just slower. I mean, everything's slower moving right now. That's one of the things I don't love about this early spring streamer fishing.
For sure.
I think of streamer fishing, I like to rip the fly.
For sure.
You get that slow streamer fishing to me is nymph fishing.
It is damn near, yeah.
It is. It's not damn near. It is.
Stop.
You could put a bobber on there if you.
You probably could.
And actually, that's not something to shy away from either. That's actually a pretty effective method. Not a lot of people do that, but I do know a lot of guys that fish streamers, jig streamers, stuff like that under an indicator. Up in Wyoming, we fish a lot of like crawdad stuff.
Dude, 9-pound hammer. That's a great fly for that.
Under an indicator. Just slow twitching. I remember bar fishing a meat whistle and just as slow as could possibly be. That slow stuff does work if you got the patience to do it.
Oh, it's wild. It's wild.
I'm well past that point.
No, for sure.
Patience to do it.
And it's interesting. I think with the slow stuff, like we were talking about this, I fished the Dream a lot pre-spawn, and I was telling you yesterday, it felt like most of the fish that I caught were actually on the second or third interaction, especially the cup bows, not the browns, but like the cup bows. It's like they come and they look at it, and then I feel like I get them to look at it with that slow drag, you know what I mean? But if they come up onto the shelf to look at it and then turn away, it's that slap pull reaction strike that actually gets them.
Like that little fish panicked and turned around. Yeah.
Yes.
Kind of lost track of it for a second.
The browns for sure though eat it like a nymph.
Sure.
Because they're cold.
Yep, they're
you know
cold.
what I mean? And they just kind of pick off the bottom.
Browns don't like cold water as much as rainbows do, no doubt about it.
So yeah, this kind of stuff, like I said, casting upstream, bring it down. And it's not to say, I don't want to make it sound like as simple. it's not that simple. It's not that easy. It's not just throw it up and like bring it down. Yes,
Sure,
you could float it
sure.
under an indicator. I think there's
Well,
a
and I
lot
think, you know,
to.
staying in contact with it and being able to sort of adjust the fly and keep it in that currency.
Yes.
You know, jig it, wiggle it,
And
mend your line when you don't need to mend, just to make the fly move a little bit.
the wiggle is key. 'Cause
Subtle movement.
I think what happens a lot with it's more so this time of year, not every engagement actually turns into an eat. Like,
for sure.
You know what I'm saying?
sure.
Like you can move a lot of fish that do not eat these things, and that's why I love these zonker flies. And I picked out a Sculpzilla also, but things that wiggle a lot in a short period of
Built-in
space
movement.
without not a lot of movement. I fished a lot of different people, and I've streamer fished with a lot of people this winter, and a lot of guys want to fish that articulated stuff, deer hair heads. Yes, they work good a lot of times a year, but it's really hard to get those things to dart in a
fish
small.
slowly.
Yeah,
That's actually a good point about streamer design. Like some flies are designed to be fished fast. Some flies are designed to be fished slow.
For sure.
Dirty Hippie is my slow fly.
great example. Yeah, great example. So, anyways, that kind of zonker stuff. Like I said, I picked out a sparring partner and a Sculpzilla. I feel like for this early season streamer stuff, before the water temp gets up and before you get a little bit of color on the water, and and they're really moving for it. That's the kind of stuff that I'm fishing right now. And when I first start fishing the Arc and the Colorado, that's probably how I will be doing it for the first couple of weeks. You know what I mean? Before they start getting real hot on it. So,
Which would be when everyone else is fishing a nymph.
exactly, 100%, 100%. Which there's still time to do that. You know what I mean?
There's
But
always time to nymph fish.
there's always time to nymph fish. Some people really enjoy it. We've learned that recently.
Actually, nymph fishing is not. There's some allure to nymph fishing, and I say that from being a longtime guide and watching yarn indicators. One of the cool things about nymph fishing is you don't know what you're going to catch. Especially if you're blind fishing.
Yeah.
When that bobber goes down, you don't know if it's a 5-inch fish or if it's a 24-inch fish. It's hard to tell sometimes. So but there has to be the possibility of that big fish in there.
100%.
So it can be alluring if you're occasionally catching a bigger fish. I tend to like to take a more active role. I just don't have the attention span that I used to have.
Yeah.
To sit and watch an indicator for 4 hours and catch fish, every now and again. During this quieter time of year. But like I say, as things start to ramp up, you can get into some pretty good nymph fishing where you can, kind of start to adjust things. And I think that's where you start to figure things out a lot more, is when you're having a lot of fish in front of you that are eating, whether you can see them or not, where you can kind of make those adjustments and read the water a little differently.
Yep. This is the most interesting nymph fishing of the year. What we're about to get into.
Yes, the spring nymph fishing. Yeah,
Yes.
the shallow, as the fish move up into the shallow riffles, I couldn't agree more. 100% sight nymphing. That I count that one notch behind dry fly fishing.
Yeah.
It's just 3-dimensional.
So on that, what kind of flies do you like for that sort of rig? How do you like to approach
Depends
those
a
sorts
little
of
bit on
situations?
where you are, but I mean, typically in the springtime it's going to be Baetis.
Yep.
Baetis nymph. So any variety of Baetis emergers. Of course I fish a Juju Baetis, a little bit, a 2-bit hooker, size 18 black 2-bit hooker is one of my favorite springtime flies. Usually a black 2-bit with a Juju Baetis behind it is a pretty good bet.
Pretty unfair.
It is pretty unfair. So I try to fish other stuff sometimes. RS2 historically. I've caught a billion fish on an RS2. Bar merger, pheasant tail. Small Baetis nymph, size 20. I don't go super tiny, size 20, even size 18.
Yep.
Some of those spring Baetis can be a little bit bigger.
Especially on the freestones.
Well, yeah, particularly on the free. Well, on the freestone fish don't seem as picky about it being the exact size of the thing that they're eating. They'll eat fish in the Arkansas. They'll eat Lance's silver bullet perdigon.
Yep.
In a size 16.
Yep.
Which is way oversized.
Yep.
But they eat that kind of stuff really well. Perdigons sort of break the hatch idea that you got to kind of match the size and.
It is so interesting.
It is. It flummoxes me why they eat those damn things so well, but they do. There ain't no argument.
Nope.
I got a whole big box of them. I like silver beads for springtime. Just write that down somewhere. But yeah,
That's a hot tip right there.
Silver bead stuff works really well. I just tied a bunch of 2-bit hookers with a silver bead on the head. So I also tied some just silver beads to a hook because I want to see if it actually makes a difference what is behind it.
I'm actually really curious to see what
I am
happens.
too. I hope it doesn't work. Because if it does, it's going to just ruin everything.
I know.
Yeah, it's terrible. I hope it doesn't.
Yeah,
work.
what if you go down there with Larry, you put up 60 fish on a fucking silver
You'll never hear about it. Is what'll happen. You'll never hear about
Sign
that.
an NDA.
Yeah. So I mean, 2-bit Juju Baetis, a little bit, typically in a sight fishing, that little short leash. We did the video on the short leash.
Yep.
Little stick-on balsa or what's it? The angler's image, bigger stick-on indicator. I can't remember what it's called. I like that bigger stick-on indicator just for kind of a line marker. A little lead putty, little split shot on there. Typically, it's fairly shallow water. All sight fishing. If I can see fish in a riffle, I'll be happy all day.
Yeah, no, it's really fun.
That's especially when you can see them eat it. You can get usually in a riffle it's broken water, so you can get fairly close to them. You can really kind of direct it to them, and it eliminates a little bit of the up down variable. So you're not always it's not always super imperative how much weight you've got on. If you've got maybe too little weight for that slot, you just cast a little further upstream, give it more time to sink. So
yes.
you got a little more variable there, a little more adjustment, just in your casting distance than having to change the lead every single, every 2 steps that you take.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes it's something you need to do.
Another one that you turned me on to is I feel like so often if you're fishing a riffle, you're close to a fish, it's in a bucket. We talk about this a lot. Guys, just fly their flies over the top of a fish's head 15 times and they want to change. Picking up your indicator off of the water and allowing your weight to just sink down, just following that weight down into that bucket, my God, that will increase your catch ratio so much.
I think that is something that, and I've watched lots of people do it over the years, sight fishing. You think your fly is going by the fish, and I mean, make your best guess, try to get it going by them. But I mean, if you make 10 casts by a fish that's white mouthing under the water, and he hasn't eaten your fly, change something, not the fly.
Yeah.
He's probably not seeing your fly.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a billion times I've walked up and see a fish white mouth, and if you put the fly where it needs to go, he eats it on the first cast.
Yep.
The first time he sees it. So if you make 10 casts, they're not seeing your fly. You've got to adjust something. So you either have to cast a little further upstream to let that fly get further down, some sort of adjustment. Maybe your angle and the refraction in the water of where you're seeing the fish is not quite on. I've seen that a lot. You're fishing past the fish.
Yeah.
I always watch where my weight hits the water. So I can kind of get an idea where my flies landed from there. I think of it a lot like dry fly fishing. Like that weight hits, I see that little splat, and I kind of see where the flies land, and then I can direct from there. I can drag, move in or out. It's just like the drop and drag with the carp stuff. Drag the fly into the lane, pick it up, let it sink, and feed the drift. And I'm, very often I'm fishing probably 6 feet of drift.
Yes, so short.
Maybe 6 feet of drift. 3 feet in front of the fish, and then wait till it's 3 feet behind him before I pick it up.
Yes.
So not big long drifts with a big fat indicator on there. That short nymph stuff is very much like dry fly fishing. You drill the fly to the fish, it gets past him. If you didn't eat it, you pick it up and you put it in again.
Yep.
If they don't eat it, change something. Move a little bit. Make your cast a little bit more right, a little bit more left. Just changing those variables. Even when you think you're right on them. I've done it 100 times. You think you're right on them, and then you make a cast that you think is bad, and that's the one they eat. That's the one that they saw the fly on. Fish are not nearly as picky as we give them credit for, especially in the springtime. They will mow down your shit.
I think the moving your feet too. That's one that I tell myself all the time when I'm on the water, and a big mantra is mend with your feet. Don't try to make a harder cast.
Yep.
With the dry fly stuff, sometimes it's nice to make a harder cast, but with those situations where you're trying to figure it out, a lot of times it's just you take a step up.
Yeah, take one step forward.
A totally different
and it
set of
just changes
circumstances.
The angle of your rod's here and your line's here, and it just moves everything over. Probably moves it 6 inches really, but it's those little adjustments. Everybody talks about micro adjustments with the weight or changing your fly. I don't change flies. I mean,
no.
I change flies when I lose one. But I mean, I very rarely am like, I don't have the right fly on.
Yeah.
In the realm of the flies that I listed, those are all the right fly. They will eat those.
Especially in the right size. And that was something I wanted to circle back on is 20 is the right size for the tailwater stuff.
It is.
I see a lot of guys try to get away with 16s and 18s in the spring because they want to fish a bigger fly. Sure. It is not the right answer. Fish the 20 on the surface and subsurface. Our Colorado, different story, but with the tailwater stuff.
The tailwater stuff, I would say I fish 20, 90% of the time.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And all the other sizes the other 10% of the time. Yep. Big and small from there.
Word.
Look
at that.
Bet, kids.
Stop it.
Bet. What else? Streamers, nymphs. How do you feel about springtime dry fly fishing?
I like springtime dry fly fishing.
I do too.
I would say that is probably my favorite dry fly fishing. that and like attractor fishing creeks. I mean, it's
Sure.
that's
Yep.
that's the best stuff there
I like
is.
all dry fly fishing, but I do like springtime dry fly fishing.
Yeah.
Beta hatches, especially those little bit bigger betas that we get in the spring, and the fish are a little dumber.
Very dumb, yeah.
You don't have to. I don't fish 7X at all. I very rarely even fish 6X on a lot of that
Yeah, I
stuff.
don't think I
fish
fish 6X
5X
for that stuff.
on most of it. I'm beating a dead horse here, but I mean, I fish a molefly or a timmy. If I see a fish rising to betas, those are the flies that I put on.
Yep.
Size 20 seems to do it every time.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Occasionally, and it can still be done, which is one of the things that I love about it. Is like you get these super technical little patterns that are cripply, blah blah blah. But like a size 20 parachute atom sometimes works pretty good too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. For sure.
Especially if you can't see it, you put a parachute atoms 10 inches in front of your little fly, and they'll eat that parachute atoms.
Yeah.
So that's not something to be overlooked. I think getting a good drift and feeding the fly to the fish, getting it where he sees it, where he's expecting to see it, and getting a good drift is 90% of it.
Absolutely. A couple that I picked out just because, I mean, geez, we all just fish timmies and moleflies, like it is what it is. But I picked out loopwing emergers. I fished those on the Arc a decent amount last year.
Looping emerger is a good fly. That fly's been around a long time. Back in the day when I guided, I fished the looping emerger a lot.
Yeah,
That's a good fly, and that's actually not far off from a timmy, just like a CDC
Yeah,
version of
100%,
Yep.
100%. I didn't even think about that. I fished Bighorn Canyon. It was probably a little before you went down there, so like late April last year or something like that, and got bored of catching them on the molefly because it was so automatic,
Yep.
and I was flipping through my box just being like,
Yeah. What else?
wonder if I could catch them on this. Wonder if I could catch them on this. And that fly proved to be the most productive out of all the other ones that I tried. But another one that I picked out, which is it's kind of molefly-esque in its effectiveness, is the bar emerger as a dry fly.
As a dry fly.
Yes, as a
Keyword,
dry
yep.
fly. Yes. And especially for what you just described, parachute atoms or something more visible with a dropper off the back. I don't know if there's it's really one of the only things I would put in the molefly category
Sure.
of deadliness.
Yeah, well,
of it just doesn't really get refused.
Years ago, what Bard told me about it, it was meant to be fished as a dry. The original was a dry fly.
Yeah.
And I remember I was on the Frying Pan, I think, is the first place that I fished it dry. And you're fishing 10 feet away from it. You have to. The fly's invisible.
Yes, you cannot see it.
Yeah, I was young then. I could see really well. But I mean, the fly just barely makes a blip on the surface. But if you can direct that to a rising fish, he will eat it every time.
Every time. It's ridiculous.
And that goes back to, anytime fish are being dicks, I always say put on something that's harder for you to see. So that's smaller, darker, or lower floating.
Yeah.
And that fly is all of those.
All of those things
all
in
of those
spades.
things, and really hard to see. Talking about the parachute atoms, just as a tip on that, don't put your little tiny dropper fly that you can't see 2 feet behind your parachute atoms. Put it 8 inches behind your parachute atoms. Keep it really close. You're much more apt to be able to direct the fly. The fly is going where you think it's going. When you've got a 2-foot tether, that fly can be too many different places, and not directed. And your cast sort of stops at that first fly. That back fly just kind of hangs out there. So short dropper behind your dry fly.
No, that's a good point. God, this thing is so fishy. It's just one of those.
You've got
that you
this.
look at.
The
floating wet.
Floating wet.
Yes.
So I want to talk about that too.
Yeah.
That along with a soft tackle emerger, my pattern.
Yeah.
Both of those flies fished as a nymph or a dry. So betas, and this is something that confuses a lot of people. Beta spinners crawl down in the water to lay their eggs. They don't fall spent on the water. So they crawl down in the water to lay their eggs. So that floating wet with the wing together, a down wing, like the soft tackle emerger, sort of a down wing hanging over its back, imitates that stage really well. I've had killer days on the Arkansas with that. Fished that on the Platte for years. And when I first came up with it, I wanted it as an option for an RS2, and it worked really well. But I think it was because it looked like the spinner.
Interesting. Yeah.
So a drowned spinner is a thing as well. Especially in the afternoon, if you start seeing on your waders, you see bugs crawling down.
Yeah.
That's a good time to put that on.
Yeah. Huh. Super interesting.
Super interesting.
I've never caught them like that before. That would be super fun.
Well, you're too young for that.
I know.
Maybe this year.
This is why I don't say expert.
Maybe
Expert in training.
In training.
Exactly. We're getting there. What else we got? I feel like we could maybe touch on some We kind of touched on dry dropper stuff. Did we touch on dry dropper
Yeah, well,
stuff?
not really. Dry dropper stuff. I mean, fishing. As we were kind of setting up for this, you know, essentially we've been talking so far about wade fishing. Float fishing in the spring, dry dropper is sort of the way to go. Unless you get a pot of fish that are rising that you can kind of park up and fish to.
Yeah.
But dry droppers is the way to go on rivers like the Colorado and the Ark. Early spring. I like a jigged two-bit hooker there. A Fat Angie or a Charlie Boy or a baby, or not a baby boy, but a Boy Wonder. Something floaty on top, and then one or two jig nymphs below it.
Yeah.
The jig nymphs do seem to hang up less. I don't know that I catch any more fish on them, but I seem to lose less of them.
For sure.
So
For sure. They just get to depth so efficiently too.
yeah,
It's just
yeah.
such an efficient system when you've got that on
Yeah,
top
well,
of those.
yeah, everything stays taut in between.
Yep.
And as the fish as the bugs start to get active, the fish are on the lookout for them. So, places that are fish factories, Arkansas is a great example, that have so many fish in them. Like if your fly is down where it needs to be, you're showing it to a lot of fish.
Yep.
If you've got a brass bead or even a single bead fly, small single bead fly, like that's nowhere near deep enough to
For sure.
to be in the game, from a boat for a decent drift.
Yep.
If you're getting 40-foot long drifts, it's a different story. But for like short, not pocket water, but short shots, a heavy fly makes a huge difference.
I remember the first time that I was down there last year in the spring. I was fishing I think it was probably a 14 thread Frenchie, with like a 3.8 or 4.3 millimeter bead on, like just so heavy, like 3 or 4 feet down below hopper, just wade fishing or whatever. And it's just, if you can punch through to where they are, they will eat it.
If you show them your fly, that sort of is the truth in the spring. Is if you can show them your fly while they're eating, they'll probably eat it. They eat a lot of stuff.
Well, and especially on the Ark, you saw, and I mean you see it yourself, but you saw those videos that I took last year of the rocks flipped in the springtime. The amount of bugs,
many kinds,
and big bugs too that are moving around in that place.
Yeah,
you can get away with.
Yeah, the whole river. It's not just the fish that wake up in the spring. Yeah, the bugs do too.
We didn't really talk about golden stones or anything like that for those freestones.
Golden stones are a little later, mid-April.
Yeah.
They'll get active. That's a good early season fly for sure. But mid-April is when they kind of start to. The nymph anyway gets active.
Yeah.
Anywhere from a true golden to even a pretty pale golden for that molting stone.
Yeah. Do they molt in the wintertime? Because I hear about people catching them on them in the wintertime, and I just wonder if
I think they molt.
Are they actually moving, or are they just dumb fish?
Those bugs live in the water all the time, so there's the possibility of them getting washed out anytime.
Sure, yeah.
And fish know what that stuff is. I talk about that beef, that lucky bee fly. Fish know what that thing is. They know what a golden stone is. They may not have seen one for a couple weeks, but they know what it is.
Sure, yeah, it's good.
So that's a food source that they're used to seeing. It's not out of line. And especially, like I say, especially in the spring where they're just putting on the feed bag and trying to eat. If there's a billion betas, they're gonna key on betas. But it's not to say, I've had it 100 times have it also. It's not to say it won't come up and eat the damn hopper.
Sure, yeah.
And there ain't no hoppers out yet, in early April.
Yeah.
They'll come and eat that big dry. So they're just on the lookout for food.
Yeah.
And I'd say one of the biggest things in any time of year, but particularly in the spring, don't worry about changing your fly constantly. Worry about getting a good drift. Think of every cast you make as if there was a fish rising there. Approach it like there was a fish rising there that you're going to make a good cast on the first cast and get it in where it needs to be on the first cast, and then let it come through. And if you need to make a second cast, make that nice and clean. Don't just beat the water. Don't just slap it out of the boat or slap it onto the bank. A little bit of stealth still pays off for sure.
All year long, a little bit of stealth still pays off. Wish more people would appreciate that fact.
I actually wish less people would, because it just
Fair.
needs more for me.
That's fair.
Because I'm greedy and I like to catch 7 or 8 fish in a day.
That's
just huge numbers like that.
Huge numbers.
Huge numbers.
Look at that, Charlie Craven.
7 or 8.
A 7-fish guy.
7 fish. 7's just about right. After that,
it becomes greedy.
It's all gravy from there.
That's crazy.
What else do I have on my list for you? What size tippet do you fish on your streamers with your dead drift rig?
For that, I'm fishing a just 0x, very close to. So for that rig, that's, I would say, maybe not Dream Stream specific, but that's mostly what I've been fishing it on, has been the Dream. And if you guys know, if you fish it, it's obviously like very deep, very sudden shelves more so than a lot of other places.
Drop-offs, yep.
So I keep it really close to the sink tip. I downstream mend that sink tip a lot and try to let the whole thing sink to the like almost think of it as like a booby rig, like lay the whole thing
yeah.
on the bottom, you know what I mean,
Drag
and
it
just
along.
crawl it. I would say, once I start going and fishing the arc and stuff like that, I switch between heavy weighted flies with long leaders and the sink tip stuff. In pushier canyon water,
Heavy weighted flies with long leaders on a floating line.
yes,
Yep.
because I think in pushier canyon water where it's more complex, it's actually easier to get those to depth
Easier
with
to
that kind of
manage,
rig, with the high sticking
Being
and
able to
stuff.
bend and move it. Yep.
More monotonous water, Gore Canyon, Dream,
Sure.
stuff like that. That's where I'll run the sinking
Yep.
with the
Different
closer
water
to the-
types. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I find if you're gonna fish a fly slow and kind of swing, if you're gonna fish it slowly, a sink tip line is better for that.
Yeah.
If you're ripping a fly, I think you can manipulate the fly better with a
You
floating
can
line.
definitely manipulate better with a floating line. Yeah, I think with the sink tip, that is one of the downsides of it. You really get locked into
Yeah, you're stuck with a
few
straight
retrieves.
line pull. I mean, you can move it around a little bit, but it's not near the amount. That
You don't get the lateral movement.
Right.
You can up and down, you can fast and slow, but you can't, like what you were doing on the arc with the darting its head
Sure.
back and forth, you can't really pull
Yeah,
it off with
you-
the sinking lines.
Yeah, nice straight line.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they don't want to come up toward the surface, they eat that too.
Something else we could talk about is Front Range creeks are going to are unlocked at this
getting
point.
there. Yep.
Fish Clear Creek 2 nights ago got skunked, kind of sucked, but I mean, lots of open
Certainly.
water,
It's
all that kind
coming.
of stuff.
We talk about this in the shop a lot. Those east-west canyons are about a month behind everything else. North-south gets sun, east-west does not. So those east-west canyons are a little slower opening than the north-south stuff. So to keep that in mind, that's an easy one. They fish really well during the summer months, but during the and even during the hot part of the summer because they've got more shade on them.
Yep.
But during the winter or cooler springtime, they've got more shade on them, which is not always as good. So that stuff starts up a little bit later. We get a lot of people coming in, into February, March, wanting to go fish Clear Creek, and it's just probably not going to be very good yet.
Yeah, a guy was in here today going to Fish Clear Creek. I mean, I would say if you're going to go do it, I think leeches, zonkered style stuff as point flies on indicator rigs are great because they will pull
Same stuff that you'd have fished a month ago.
Yes, yes,
on a north-south creek. Yep.
100%.
Yep.
It'll pull fish. I fished a woolly bugger. I moved 5 fish. None of them made it. That should start going. I mean, to me, that's the best way to fish it in the springtime before the dry fly action starts. I would say I saw them eating midges off the surface. I'm sure you could actually probably go get some good technical dry fly fishing down there right now. There's a good winter stonefly hatch in there around this time of year. So like size 18, size 16 black tubit hookers, like that's a fucking killer fly in there right now. And then just midges behind
Well, and
that.
honestly, I mean, it's March 14th now. I mean, in the next week or two, that's all gonna change. That's gonna warm up considerably. It'll be caught up to springtime there too. So.
That'll be good. That'll be very good. What else?
What else?
Warm water stuff. Bass and carp, all the ponds around here. This is not the Charlie Craven part of the show. He's just gonna vomit over here.
I'm just gonna sit quietly.
These are not the
shake
Lord's
my
fish,
head.
as he
These
would
are not
say.
God's fish. Yes.
But no, I would say the warm water stuff's good. I caught a bass off a golf course pond the other day. Not that that's really saying
they know you were
anything,
there?
but they did know I was there, which really ruined a lot
not
of the
as
fun.
much fun.
It just ruined all of the fun.
I think even if you have permission, you should still sneak in.
That's a good idea.
That would
actually
just make it more fun.
But something that I'll say about the bass, and look, I am not a bass expert by any chance, but this has been proven to me here, especially in Colorado, as somebody who's fished bass in the South a lot. They eat small stuff out here. Like I caught that fish on a little backstabber, like a size 8, 10 leech. I've caught them on nymphs, like just dry dropper fishing for bluegill and stuff like that. I feel like this time of year, everybody wants to like rip a big game changer around and stuff like that.
Yeah,
yes,
not
sure.
yet.
You can probably catch a big one at some point in the spring doing that. But I think if you wanted to be successful right now, small crystal buggers, little zonkered stuff,
Yeah, little crystal
busters.
bugger, little leech, pretty darn good bet. That little squirrel leech is what I always used to fish.
Yeah, no, that would be perfect. And I would say if you would allow me to talk about it.
Oh my God, he's going to talk about the carp.
Yes,
thing.
the carp.
Living under bridges.
I would say in the past 2 or 3 days, it feels like they've really started to heat up in the ponds and on the river. I would say in the river, absolutely. You're just dying right now.
This is great. Please go on.
In the river, Heavy stuff. They still seem to be they're still tailing pretty deep. They're not like up on the banks yet. So heavy stuff that you can put right in front of them. Jaren really turned me on to that last year. I was fishing a lot of lighter stuff, but jig buggers, like those are super, super good. Poachers, honestly, I would say super good. But in the ponds,
Lance Egan got 2 mentions in this video.
that's
Lance.
crazy.
So
We'll invoice you.
yeah, we'll send you a bill.
I would say in the ponds though, the biggest thing I would say, and whatever you kind of have to tie to like do this, but like unweighted flies. Unweighted flies are the key. All the stuff that you can get out of the bins is all weighted stuff. And I would say if you were to get some out of the bins, bead chain eyes, like headstands, things like that, that will float a little slower. Carp bitters sink really slow. But yeah, if you tie and you can do like unweighted zonkers and things like that, that sink rate this time of year, that seems like they really, I don't know, the weighted stuff just can feel obtrusive sometimes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Plunk it in on them.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the
Yeah, and you know, I haven't. I would say in general. I mean, not just carp, but I think a lot of fish are, you know, sort of tentative about their feeding this time of year. Like that. You know, they like get into it and they'll do it, but they'll go away from it pretty darn quick.
Yes, for sure.
You know, they haven't sort of got the pack mentality that everybody's in here eating, we're safe.
Yes.
They do tend to spook pretty easily. You know, the Clear Creek dry fly fishing.
Yeah.
You know, you make one bad cast in there and now you're done.
Yes.
Go back and get in your car.
Which is really such a good way to like tune yourself up for the year.
It'd be nice if it wasn't the very first cast you made of the year, though.
No, for sure. But I felt that way about like a little later in the spring, but like when Rocky Mountain National Park kind of like unlocks, you know what I mean? Like going up there and doing that super techie dry fly stuff for the brookies on the spring or on the little meadow streams where it's actually really difficult early in the year. You know what I mean? It kind of like gets you in the rhythm. I would say the beta stuff on the tailwaters is like actually easier than that.
I would agree. I would agree. Yeah, those fish that don't play the game, that spook, you know, that spook very easily, where you can't even get it. You spook that fish and he spooks 3 more fish and off you go.
3 pools, just
quarter-mile walk before you have a chance at another one. But that builds character.
God, I can't wait for that type of fishing. I love that.
You let me know how that goes for you.
I love that.
I just like to catch them, which is what I do all the time.
You are pretty good at that.
I'm going to, Max has the biggest fish of the year so far.
I do. It actually, this is what it ate.
Wow.
Hot tip. Size 8 white crystal bugger.
Size 8 white crystal bugger.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
21 inches or something like that. 23?
Yes.
23. I saw the picture. I don't believe it.
You do believe it. You don't want to believe it, but
we'll see. There's a lot of year left. How many fish have you caught this year?
Oh, trout. My God. Trout? I don't know. I'm probably in the 40s or 50s, I would say.
I am at 0.
Heard. You're going to catch up really quick, though.
I am going to catch up very quickly. I like to give them a little head start. Everybody gets a 3-month head start. I will have the most bone. Well, maybe Raj might catch me with bonefish because he knows a lot.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, let's see how. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Can we get a whiteboard?
I think we should. We have a whiteboard.
We should actually put it out front.
We should. Yep.
That would be fun.
Just keep stats because it's all about stats.
We should do a whiteboard for staff and a whiteboard for customers. But you have it's got to be obviously a verifiable photo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You've got to have a picture not just near your net like your 23.5-inch fish.
Yes.
Those net fish.
We've seen a lot of your 23.5-inch fish.
Bring them together.
We're suspect.
I'm suspect of a lot of 23.5-inch fish. All right, so Max is going to put that together for you. That'll be on his action item list.
Junior will be in charge of verifying fish pics.
He loves fish pics.
That's his favorite thing.
Yeah. Junior loves fish pics. If you have fish pics, especially if they're small fish, and if you have a lot of them, please scroll through them.
What you should do is you should come in and you should not have them up on your camera roll yet.
No.
And you should fumble around. You should fumble around with your phone. You should show us things on your phone that probably we shouldn't see while you're looking for the photo. And then when you pull out the photo, you should get a phone call as you're pulling it out. And then you should take the phone call. Yeah. That's what you should do. That's Junior's favorite thing.
and there is your spring kickoff.
There it is.
Exactly how.
Look at that. We're so excited.
We're super excited to just have the whole year.
Yeah.
We got anything else for you?
I don't think so. Buy some Umpqua Stratos Tippet. It's going to change your life.
It actually will. I'll talk just a little bit about that here real quick. This is a nylon tippet that is as abrasion resistant as fluorocarbon. So without the sinking properties of fluorocarbon, super abrasion resistant, and it's got a cool little camo speckled pattern on it. It's got little gray dots on it.
Yeah, it's actually really cool.
So when it sits on the surface, you don't get that refraction where you get the big light spots that come off of it. You've got some broken up color on that tippet. We are super excited about that. We've been selling a ton of it, and you should get some. That's cool stuff. That's going to change the game for the upcoming dry dropper season and just dry fly fishing in general.
Yes.
I think that's going to make a huge difference.
Yes.
I've always used fluorocarbon, but this new nylon stuff, I think I'm pretty excited
I'm actually
about.
excited about it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I've also
absolutely.
always used fluoro, and I think this is going to be cool. Look at that. Product
Get some,
placement.
Put it in your bag.
CharliesFlybox.com.